All right, and welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. And in case you're just joining us, you're on time for the discussion that we had lined up for you this morning, the very first part, as we look at how the tourism sector has been affected by the ongoing protests against the government. Of course, warnings have been issued with regards to how this sector is doing, a sector that just recently was reported to be doing quite well with regards to how it has contributed to even our country's economy. But to help me understand, what has been happening in the tourism sector in the last month or so, I have with me a panel in studio, and I'll just run you through who I'm hosting this morning. From my far right, we have Mike Macharia, the CEO of the Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers and Caterers. Asante sana.
Good morning.
Good morning. We also have with us Lisa Kibutu, a board member at the Kenya Coast Tourism Association. Asante for creating time.
Good morning.
And also joining us is Charles Gaku, the CEO, Air Travel and Tourism Studies. Thank you once again. And we'll be joined virtually by Mohamed Harsi, the former national chairperson of the Kenya Tourism Federation, to discuss this very important subject. But of course, just to set the pace, we are looking at very unique times. What has been happening in our country has affected, so many sectors, and even service delivery. We've seen transport being paralyzed in major towns and cities. But specifically, just looking at the tourism sector, and I'll begin with you, Mr. Macharia, what are we looking at in terms of the depth of this crisis?
Thank you very much. The crisis, as we always say, our business is highly dependent on the macro environment. So obviously when there is a bit of instability, the markets become apprehensive. So what we've seen so far is that when the demonstration started, there was no reaction. The only reaction happened when they turned violent. So when they turn violent, people start feeling that it's not safe for us to go there. On our part, we have a system of keeping people informed under the Kenya Tourism Federation. In fact, we'll be issuing a statement, I think our fourth or fifth statement out this morning. Just giving a factual recap of the situation. So what we've seen is that we had initially some requests for cancellations, which we recovered. But as the situation protracted, people started feeling that they might want to either stay away in particular places, particularly the city centers. But we have not seen a major disruption in the safari circuit. We have not seen a major disruption in the coastal beach tours. But we've seen some cancellations within the main cities, particularly Nairobi, the city center, Nairobi CBD. We are now losing at least a day per week. So you find that, like now yesterday, you found that only the people who are staying in the hotel were the customers of the hotel. The other general public that would walk in within the day for business and lunches and dinners chose to stay away. So we are seeing that, but we have not seen a very, very big block of cancellations coming in. And mainly it's because we are keeping our markets informed, and nothing has happened to tourists. We've not had any disruption at all. But the worrying thing is not even the cancellations. What we worry about is the lack of new bookings. So when you find yourself in a situation like this, instead of concentrating on who's canceling, you look at your trends. Are you receiving any new bookings?
New business, yeah.
Yeah, and that is usually the bigger challenge, is when people are not booking, they're choosing other destinations. So we hope that we'll be able to resolve ourselves as a country, because it's a country conversation, and move on with business. It is tourism that is going to rescue the rest of the sectors, because under the circumstances, it is the only one that is highly resilient, even as we speak, if you look at what's happening across the sectors.
All right, Mr. Macharia, you'll tell us exactly how, why we should not ignore this sector that you're saying is very pivotal in saving this country. But Lisa, from the coastal region, that is actually one of the high-ranking tourism destinations, and it's also highly ranking in terms of the hotspots for the demos we have witnessed in the country in the last month or so. What have you observed?
Yeah. So our observations as the Tourism Association is just like Mr. Macharia said. We've not had a lot of cancellations. But again, there's no new business. We expect right now we're in the height of our high season. This is actually considered high season, where we expect occupancies of 80–90%, but we're experiencing 60, 50, and in some cases 40%. So because of this, no new business, as we whatever. But as KCTA, we intervened with the security teams. So if you go to places like Diani, Watamu, even Malindi actually, their business has picked up because, as you know, we've not heard any action over there. Diani is also quite full. I mean, they're experiencing 80–90% occupancy rates at the moment. But that's because KCTA, we intervened with the security teams, so we're diverting traffic to go through Dongo Kundu instead of coming through Mombasa CBD. Yeah. All right.
I like how we've started on a optimistic, note. So, one would think, things would be bad, but I like the fact that as stakeholders, you're saying, okay, there are a few things we should be concerned about, but we're still okay. We are still managing. And Gaku, I'd like also for you to weigh in. One key interesting thing that Macharia started with was just how to relate how this sector operates with the stability. And I want you to take us deep into that. Why is it important, and what is the correlation between the country's state of stability and peace with the success in the tourism and hospitality industry, for us to understand why we should even be sitting down and discussing the way forward for this country going
Good. Thank you, Safrine. As a trainer at Air Travel and Related Study Center, this is a peak season as well for taking our students for industry attachment. And our students are already in the various hotels and lodges for the industrial attachment. And we have not received a single call from any hotel manager telling us, come back, come for your students because business is low. Or don't bring more students, or we had confirmed 4 slots, now give us only 3 or even 2. There has been nothing of the sort. That means
so no disruption.
No disruptions as the numbers. That shows that it's quite optimistic. I must reiterate that my age group, the students I train are between 18 and 24 years old. And that is the youth, the Gen Z, if you like. The tourism industry is the only industry that I know that employs that number of the Gen Zs. Actually, I think Mike, you talk about 75% of the industry is more or less the young people. So whatever it is that we do, whatever it is that you're planning to do for a country, we should never lose sight of the fact that our industry absorbs most of those that we find on the streets, and that's not even enough. Remember that we are in the business of exporting labor as well. The cabin crews, the hotel managers, all those who want to work in the cruise companies and so on and so forth that we train are not only required in Kenya but all over the world, because the industry is booming elsewhere, and these numbers are needed. So whatever it is that we do, we need to think that this is for the Gen Zs, not just in the country, but also outside the country. And we should really put our country together so that we can continue training, the hotels can continue booming so that we don't lose chances for industrial attachment for students. So there's a smooth flow of labor out of the country that is skilled, so that when the Emirates come calling, or Qatar's, or all the hotels and airlines, they have good international standards, good quality from our country for employment.
All right, so it's a Gen Z agenda, what you're talking about. But I also want to know from you, what's the correlation between peace and stability in a country and, a thriving tourism industry, so that we get to understand why, in as much as we may be having grievances and complaints about the state of our country, we should also be keen on looking at the impact of the manner in which we express those grievances.
Ours is one of the most sensitive industries that we have in the world, not just Kenyan tourism, but also global tourism. Remember that those who come here come for leisure. So any perception, even perception of a disruption, they'll change course. And the worry, as my two colleagues are saying, it's not about the numbers that you're dealing with and how you're haggling to ensure that they remain on board or they don't cancel. I'm much more worried about what the future portends for the industry. So my appeal to the Gen Zs would be, let us stop it. Let us have a conversation with government so that the numbers, we sustain the numbers and we have a future for numbers that will be coming to the country. So the country is sustained by tourism efforts. Much more than that is Kenya has become not just a tourist destination, but also a conference destination. So the moment we move to tourism and it is hit and the conferences are hit as well, I think it's not going to be good for anyone. So let's have a discussion. Let's stop whatever it is that you're doing and really sit down with government and discuss. It's for the benefit of the Gen Zs, as we all know.
All right.
Yes.
I understand we have with us Mohammed. Mohammed has just joined us. He's the former national chairperson of the Kenya Tourism Federation. Good morning, if you can hear me. I just wanted to also rope you into this conversation that we're having in studio this morning. I'd like to begin by just getting your quick thoughts on, the current situation in the country and how it's affecting the tourism sector this particular morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. The key issue that we need to deal with, firstly, the Gen Zs, and when you look at Kenya as a country, we've really evolved in terms of our democratic space. So I would like to commend Gen Zs, the young people. We've always accused them of not coming out on matters of national concern, but they've come out, and they've come out in large numbers. And we also want to thank government for listening to them. But there is always a balance that we need to strike, because we still have a country to look after. We still have a nation that needs to be governed after all is said and done. So when it comes to tourism and protests don't go together. But on the other hand, protests are becoming something that is well known now globally. I mean, a place like Paris was up in flames for almost a month, and tourists were still going there. But one thing that was different was that no tourist was being attacked and no disruption was being made on their routes. Now, we can protest peacefully as long as we do not interrupt people who are coming in on for their holidays. They're coming in for their businesses. But the moment you start getting an opposing group, like what we're now seeing, pro-government or pro-establishment, who are coming in to face the other, then that is not a good sign. And that is definitely going to lead to, people fighting, and that is not healthy at all. So my appeal, just the way Mike Macharia has said, we really need to be cautious, and it's about time. And I've personally appealed to Gen Z sometimes back, and I said, you know what, in war and in anything that you do, there's time to move forward and there's time to move back and to re-strategize. So this is crucial.
All right, thank you for saying that. And just coming back to you, Macharia, you mentioned, things haven't changed much, though we are concerned about the lack of new business that is coming in. I want you to talk about some of the key concerns that probably those who were planning to come to our country for conferences and meetings, what were some of their key concerns that they were raising with regards to why they were making changes to their plans, for us to understand which key areas or what are some of the issues that we need to be focusing on when we are safeguarding our borders for tourists and guests?
Yeah, I think, thank you a lot. Thanks a lot, Safrin. We sell a product known as happiness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you're in this business. That's a good product to sell. Yeah. when you're in a business, the product is happiness. Yeah. So if you're going to a place on either on holiday or on business, it's a new experience, it's exciting, it makes you happy. So if you're going to go to a place that will make you sad, then that product is negated. And that's one of the key areas. So people, the decisions that are made for holidays and for business are tied in with an emotion known as happiness. So if that emotion is not going to be present at the time that you travel, then you have a problem. And that's what most people don't understand. They think it's just about zooming in and out in an aircraft, taking pictures and, going to places, seeing animals. You also need to have that happiness. And that's one of the greatest concerns of the market. If I'm going somewhere, am I going to be happy? Am I going to enjoy myself? Am I going to have a good experience? Because that's what they're looking for. And that's a key concern. So whenever you have a situation where that is removed, then you start asking, what are the alternatives? So for us as a market, as a supplier of the service, we'll go back and tell people, look, protests are normal. I mean, if you just type onto your Google the word protests, you'll see that it's not only Kenya that's protesting about one thing. We had elections in France the other day. There's protests in Bangladesh. There was something in South Africa the other day, Namibia, even Ghana.
There's protests in Spain because of too much
tourism.
Too much tourists. Yeah, they think you're too
That is an
many.
irony.
Yeah. So you'll find that it's an understanding that the word protest does not have to mean violence. Yeah, and this is where we need to draw the line. And our protesters know that because they always call for peace. Our police know that because even as there are reports and we've seen incidences of the police being violent, it's not what we were seeing back in the 90s. There is a level of restraint. So we are saying, let protesters protest in peace. Give them security. That's it. It's not about this group against that group. It's about, if I want to express my feelings, let me do so in a civil manner and allow me to do that in a civil manner. So that's the thing. And we've had protests. I remember Mohammed and I were on the way to Morocco about 10, 12 years ago. And there were serious protests in Egypt. We were going through Cairo. And Tahrir Square had serious protests at that time. In fact, there were violent protests. And the guy at immigration was telling us, if you want to go into the city, just leave your passports here. We'll show you which routes to go. Avoid Tahrir Square. Go and enjoy the rest of Cairo and come back. So as tourists, you need to try and find out more information. Coming to the issue of Gen Z, it is actually 80%. That's the number that we employ as hospitality. The 80% of our employees are youth. A good number of those are in management positions. Mohammed and I are getting phased out slowly because I remember when we were both managers in hotels with Mohammed, we were Gen Z. I mean, we were in our late 20s, we were already department heads. In our mid-30s, we were already general managers. So it's an industry that actually looks after the youth. It's just that the youth agenda has not been brought on the table the way it has now. But we've always had it. In 2017, we went out to discuss the future of work. And we were asking, what do we do with our young people? Are they able to sit in a hotel from morning till evening? Or should they be taking breaks and doing other things in between? And these are conversations that we've had throughout our 20-year, because we have a symposium that discusses these issues. So in terms of tourism development, we have a few ideas, and I'm sure you'll be coming to that, of what we can do to sustain the growth. Because we are still not too happy even as a country with our numbers. We should be doing much more.
We should be doing much better. Though I was looking at the latest reports are quite impressive.
Yes.
It's like the industry is doing quite well.
Yeah.
Save for these unfortunate happenings. But Gaku, just to come to you closely, because you really work on preparing the human resource for this sector. That's your niche. And you has talked about 80% of the workforce are the young people. Just talk to us about the significance of protecting this sector, because even with what is happening right now and the protests that we've had that probably have had impact in the country. So that means then when we are talking about this sector being disrupted, we are talking about jobs also being disrupted, and not just jobs, 80% of jobs within the tourism sector of young people. Just talk to us about, that particular dynamic.
That's correct. My interaction with the youth goes back to some 32 years. Running my college, Air Travel and Related Study Center. And I go very deep as going to high schools and talking to students who are perhaps in Form 4 regarding courses in travel, tourism, and hospitality. And what I find about them is that they are very eager to join this industry, whether it's cabin crew, whether they want to be chefs, they want to be hotel managers, they want to be tour guides, they want to be travel and tourism consultants, or even air cargo managers. So the traction is there. Thanks to our alumni, Mike, Kenya Utalii College. They've really made us have a standpoint as far as training for the industry is concerned. So talk about a Kenyan and tourism, they identify. And I have to really receive students who want to join my institution because the numbers are overwhelming. And that means that the youth really identify with the industry. That's the first point. And the second point is they are eager also to learn and venture out of the country. So you get students who come in and they just don't just sit for a local examination. They want to do an international exam so they can be able to venture out and work anywhere all over the world. That's why when you travel on any
it's not just a local job market, but also a global space.
Precisely. Anytime you travel on any airline, Safrin, Qatar, Kenya Airways, Etihad, whatever it is, you'll find, for example, Kenyan cabin crew. When you go through airports in Doha, Dubai, Muscat, wherever it is, you'll find actually ground staff who are Kenyan. And this applies everywhere in the world. Go to Sydney, go to Denver, go to Seattle, you find all those happening. You find a Kenyan presence who is a youth in that particular industry. So it tells you one thing, that this is a Gen Z's moment to capture the world as far as travel, tourism, and hospitality is concerned. If only we can, as Mohammed says, strike a balance between what it is that we're agitating for and the security and the sovereignty of the country so that we have harmony in this. The biggest beneficiaries, at 80% of the industry being Gen Z, the biggest beneficiaries will actually be the Gen Z. So it is something that should hold very dear, not just from the working point of view, but right down at the middle, from high school. We should nurture these students so that they can be able to really represent Kenya on a global map, just like the way our athletes do. You find that they are really a reflection of what the industry has to offer. As Mike says, we're also being phased out. Who's going to take over from us is the Gen Z. So unless they have the shocks that we do have, Mike, and heresy, to overcome all these ruptures and so on.
I'll be coming back to you, Lisa, just to tell us, how we look now that there's been deaths that have been reported, there's been destruction of property, and a lot that has happened in the last few weeks. But for now, allow us to take a very short break. And if you have any thoughts, any question that you'd like to forward to my panel this morning, please do so at Citizen TV Kenya at Safin_Aching. But for now, we take a short break.